Going back 4.5 years ago, when I first started doing keto, things were going great for a while. I was losing weight, I was having better mental clarity, and just staying more alert and awake. And that was all good until it came time to go to bed. It got to where I was having a really hard time going to sleep, staying asleep, and not getting enough sleep obviously was just making my days very crappy. So through a lot of deep research and looking into this, I finally figured out 3 things that are gonna help make sleep a lot better on keto. I started doing these 3 things, or more specifically taking these 3 things, and due to the benefits that they have, I was able to fall asleep quicker and stay asleep while doing keto. So today, that's what we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna tell you those 3 things and go a little in depth on them as to why they work so well. So first off and foremost, I do want to go ahead before I get into these 3 things and just address the issue of caffeine, which hopefully most of you understand and know. If you drink coffee or take some kind of caffeine supplement, make sure you're taking that at least 8 hours before you go to bed. Any caffeine that you have below that 8-hour mark is going to have a really high chance of keeping you awake and making it to where you have a hard time going to sleep and then a hard time staying asleep. So for number 1, and this may seem kind of generic, but don't worry, I'm going to give you a breakdown on it, and that is B vitamins. And more specifically, we're talking about B1. Now, B1 is involved in a lot of different functions, but what we're focusing on here is the fact that one of the things that B1 really helps with has to do with your mind, your brain, and its ability to be able to calm down and come back from stress. Like if you get really worked up over something and it's just ruined your complete day, you just can't seem to come down from it, you stay jacked up and tense over it, well, that is one thing that could be a sign of a B1 deficiency. But having adequate amounts of B1 is going to make it a lot easier for your brain to turn off and be able to calm down so that you can go to sleep. I'm sure many of you, because I know I have laid down before and you just lay there, toss and turn, and no matter what you do, you can't go to sleep because your mind's going 10,000 miles an hour. Well, this is where you're going to want to make sure that you're getting some good B1 in. And the reason I said B vitamins in general is because the best way to get B1 in is, number 1 is going to be eggs. Those are a great way to get B1 in. Also, nutritional yeast is another one. And the top one of all, the one that I prefer, is going to be taking, and hear me out on this, a whole food organic B complex. Not a Walmart B complex, not a supermarket B complex, a whole food organic one. Now the reason for that is most of these cheaper ones, like I was just talking about, are petroleum based, so they're synthetic. They don't work in the body the same way. That's why you see them in absolutely insane amounts. Some of these supplements, you'll see things like 32 or 40,000% of whatever. Well, that's not what you want to go for. By taking the whole food organic one, you're getting all natural B vitamins in the right ratios on top of that. Because taking one too long can end up throwing the others out of balance. So that's another thing. Don't just go and buy a B1 supplement and think that it's going to fix the problem. The only supplement that I would recommend if you're going to take just B1 though, and I know I said don't take it, but there is one that is fat soluble and it's called Benfotiamine. I'll have a link for that in the description if you want to check it out. But this B1, like I said, is fat soluble, so it's absorbed a lot better than the water soluble B vitamins, because all other B vitamins are water soluble. This one isn't. And being that it's fat soluble, it's really good at getting into the brain and giving you that calming effect so that you can turn your brain off and go to sleep without any worries about tossing and turning or waking up. Just don't take it too long. Like I said, taking one of really anything too long without the other stuff with it is going to end up throwing the other ones out of balance. So if you try benfotiamine, I would say take it for just about a month and then cut it out for about a month and just see how that works out for you. So the next two are going to be something that I always do before bed. This is like my going to bed protocol. So for number 2, it's going to be combining potassium and salt before you go to bed, taking a little bit of each. Now the reason for that is because potassium, we already know that it's really good for like muscle cramps and things like that. It's an electrolyte, okay? It helps the signals from the brain to your muscles work the way they're supposed to and be smooth. Now, the heart is also a muscle. By taking a little bit of potassium, that's gonna help your heart rate to come down like it does naturally when you're going to sleep. Because if you got a pounding heart, like if you've ever laid down and you can like hear your heartbeat in your ear, if you've ever had that happen, that's one sign that you're most likely low in potassium. So by taking that, it can help the heart come down in rate to where you can go to sleep a lot easier. And then the reason for combining salt with this, and not just any kind of salt, we're talking about a good quality mineral salt, like Redmond's. That's the one that I prefer. The reason for that is because you don't want to take just potassium in the amounts that I'm about to tell you, because that will end up depleting your salt. Now, if you deplete your salt, you're going to end up having to go to the bathroom more. So where do you think this is going to lead to? Well, this can end up leading to you having to get up because you have to go and use the bathroom. You're having to pee every few hours. So if that's also a problem, that is also why salt is going to help, because taking that salt is going to keep you from losing or expelling a ton of water. For example, a woman that I worked with lately, that was her problem. She kept having to get up 2-3 times a night having to pee. Well, I told her, just simply do this. I said, take some good quality mineral salt and take about 1/4 to 1/8 of a teaspoon. That's it, just a small amount. Any way you can, mix it in a Dixie cup is the best way, like a little tiny cup. Put some water, add the salt to it, stir it up, knock it back, chase it with some water, and you're done. The first night that she did that, she messaged me the next day thanking me so much because she did not get up one time having to pee. That's because that salt was keeping her from losing too much water while she slept. And on top of that, when our bodies get low in salt, and I've talked about this before as far as intermittent fasting goes, when we start losing too much salt, when your salt levels get low, and those can happen from taking just potassium by itself and fasting, and in general just doing keto, you're lower on electrolytes and minerals. When you're low on salt, you have a little bit more cortisol in your body. You have an elevation of cortisol and aldosterone. So cortisol, if you don't know, is a stress hormone. It does have a place and a purpose, but it is not when you're going to sleep. You want that to be a lot lower. So that's another thing the salt is going to help with. It's going to help lower your cortisol and aldosterone levels down so that you can go to sleep peacefully and stay asleep. Now I'm going to show you the amounts that I take this stuff in and the stuff that I do recommend. Now honestly, as far as potassium citrate goes, now is the way to go with it. It's cheap. I think at the time of filming this, it's only, I think, $7 and something for this whole thing. And this whole thing will last you a while. A lot of you may have heard of Redmond's RealSalt. This is one of the best quality salts that you can get that I've been able to find so far. So that's just the salt that I use for pretty much everything. And then the Dixie cup I was talking about, and just to measure these two out, I just use 1/2 teaspoon. That's what I use. And what you're gonna do is take 1/2 teaspoon of potassium citrate. If you want to, you can make it a level teaspoon. If it's a little rounded, it's not gonna make a real big difference. By having 1/2 teaspoon, you're gonna get about 1,000 milligrams of potassium citrate. Now, for the salt, that's gonna be half the amount. You can start with 1/8 a teaspoon and then take it up to a fourth if needed. And that's gonna give you 250 to 500 milligrams, depending on if you do 1/8 or 1/4. And all you do is just take those, put them in this cup, each one of them, stir that up, and like I said, just knock it back, chase it with some water or something, and you're good to go. Number 3 on this list is going to be MCT oil. So here's the cool thing about MCT oil. It does 2 really great things inside the body that are gonna help you go to sleep. Now, number 1 is the fact that MCT oil, and this is only small amounts, but just a small amount of MCT oil helps tryptophan get into the brain so that it can be turned into serotonin and melatonin. Okay, when we're doing keto, you're obviously keeping your carbohydrates very low. Okay, due to that, we have a lot lower insulin levels, which have a lot of good benefits, but unfortunately, it's a lot harder for tryptophan to get into the brain to be turned into serotonin and melatonin. MCT oil helps kind of mimic that process, although it doesn't mimic insulin. That's not what I'm saying, but it just helps tryptophan get into the brain. Now, like I said, this is only a small amount. Usually you can achieve this effect by only taking just half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of this stuff. That's it. You don't need to go over a teaspoon because it don't take that much for this effect to happen. Now, another reason the MCT oil is going to be good is because it rapidly turns into ketones, because MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides, and those are rapidly turned into ketones, and ketones are very oxygenating in the body. Now, if you look at like sleep apnea people that have to wear the mask that give them air while they sleep, well, obviously one is because they stop breathing while they're sleeping. That's why they have to have that. But it also helps them sleep better in general because they're getting more oxygen. Now, obviously, if you don't have sleep apnea, you're gonna be breathing normal and getting oxygen in while you're sleeping. Well, ketones are gonna help get even more oxygen going through your system while you're asleep. So by taking this stuff before you go to bed, you get more tryptophan for serotonin and melatonin, and you get the oxygenating effect. Both of those combined are very powerful just in themselves. So I'm gonna go over these with you one last time. And also there's one other thing that came to my mind that I need to add to this. So technically this will be 4 things, but it is very important. So far we went over B vitamins. You wanna get whole food organic complex or the benfotiamine fat soluble version. You wanna get more of that in you. Then you want to take potassium, citrate, and salt before going to bed in about a 2-to-1 ratio. 1,000 milligrams of potassium citrate to 250 to 500 milligrams of salt. And then the MCT oil for the tryptophan getting to the brain advantage and the oxygenating effect that it has in the body. Now, the 4th thing that I want to add into this is actually extremely important because this mineral has a very common effect. Now, I've talked about this one in other videos, but that's MagEnhance. I don't have it with me right here, right now, but I will have this up on the screen and in the description just so you can see it real quick. But this stuff is absolutely great for sleep because it's got 3 different types of magnesium in it. It's got glycinate, taurate, and threonate. Glycinate is the most absorbable form of magnesium. Taurate helps the body adapt and deal with stress. That's great. Threonate's able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier to get more magnesium into the brain, which is of course going to have a calming effect along with some other good things. So I take 2 to 3 of those before I go to bed, and I'm getting the benefits of all those. Like I said, the last 3 I take religiously before bed. I never have a hard time really falling asleep, and 95% of the time I always stay asleep and always get a good night's rest. So that's the 3 that turned into 4 things that are going to tremendously help sleep on keto. But guys, keep it keto, keep it healthy, and I'll see you guys next week.